Artificial intelligence is reinventing business as we speak. You can either get up to speed or get left behind. The choice is yours, and really, it's a no-brainer. Join Cognitive Path founders Geoff Livingston and Greg Verdino as they chat with AI experts about the latest ideas, trends, and technologies that are creating the future of business today. This is No Brainer.
Hey, this is Greg Verdino. Welcome to No Brainer. I am here with Geoff Livingston, my friend, my compatriot, my partner. I would say better half. I would say other half, but I think in many ways better. How are you doing today, Geoff?
I am good. How are you, Greg? I'm in New Orleans, so camera
Nice.
quality is still bad, but
The
a
big
little
easy.
worse. Yeah.
Right? I assume you've got warmer weather than we have up here in the Northeast.
It's really nice. I was outside this morning in short sleeves. Yeah.
Sweet. All right. We have another good episode, more smart people. Before we do that, I would like to remind the smart people who are listening to be sure to rate, review, like, follow, all that kind of good stuff to help us goose and juice the algorithms. Of course, also to be notified every time we have a new episode. So please be sure to join our community and keep that community going and help others find our content as we produce it. So this time I guess if we're talking about warmth, we are taking a trip to the Amazon. Geoff, why don't you introduce who we have with us this week? I'm really excited about this episode.
Yeah, we have a great episode coming. So folks, today we have Sanjeev Pulapaka, who are a principal solutions architect at AWS. He's also the lead author on the book, Powering the Public Sector with Generative AI from Strategy and Design to Real World Applications. And Sanjeev is brilliant, man. This guy is helping everybody on the civilian side of the government get up to speed. And government AI has been a big story over the past couple of years, from regulation all the way through to the Biden administration and what they're doing to adopt, and also a lot of interesting things that are occurring on the state and local level. In some ways, a lot of folks have talked about enterprise adoption primarily and the whole ChatGPT conversation. And what they're missing is how government's actually, in some ways, leading the country into the AI era. And I am so excited to have Sanjeev, particularly with this change of administration coming. I'm sure that we're going to see a more wide open AI frontier for folks. And so it's a really pivotal time. Sanjeev, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Geoff, and thank you, Greg. It's great to be here and, really looking forward to this. It's very exciting.
Well, you are a two-time victim with me because you and I did a Gov AI Summit interview. And now I felt like I didn't get the best of that interview, so I had to bring some help with me.
I appreciate that. I appreciate all the kind words. Let's see if I live up to at least some of those. But yeah, I think it was great having the conversation, and yeah, it's really fun to chat with you guys, and this is a great topic, right? So yeah, it's happy to dive in.
So I think we were talking a little bit before we got on the pod, and maybe this is a good way to kick it off. First to you, Sanjeev, and then maybe to you, Greg. Obviously, we just had the election. Don't want to talk about the larger implications, but from an AI standpoint, it's probably going to lead to a lot of deregulation. We know that the larger Silicon Valley community backed the Trump administration in a great deal, and in large part because they want less regulation, more adoption, faster speed to market, and that probably includes the actual public sector usage of AI. With that in mind, I know it's really hard to crystal ball this, but do you have just some impressions or thoughts about how this change is going to impact the market?
Yeah, I mean, I think the basics are still going to continue. I think everybody wants this technology and everybody's driving forward to it. It's just the way it's going to be implemented. Some of the implication, like you're suggesting, might come fruition. So the current government has already set up like the base, right? Like the chief AI officers are going to be there. So, that's going to be hard to back on. So I think that ball is rolling forward. The rest of it, in terms of the fine print, that's where I think you get a little bit. It just seems like, based on what we're hearing, that some of that fine print may actually go away, and the number of regulations, as you put it, and the fine print that everyone has to go through and comb through to make sure that they're in compliance, some of that might be going away. We'll see, because I know that the administration has a lot of different goals. So let's see which ones actually go through. But I don't think it's going to hurt. I think and the most is going to be a different way to do the same thing. But I think the technology is going to keep moving forward.
Can we start with security clearance paperwork? Absolutely.
That'll be rough, Geoff. I don't know that I have an answer on this so much, right? Because it's all so new. And I should point out, by the way, while we're getting into this episode's going to air in December, I believe. We're recording it in mid-November. So, but with the speed at which everything is moving, I just want to give ourselves permission to be a couple of weeks behind the times. Don't know what's going to happen in these next few weeks, but I guess to me, I almost have more of a question than an answer, right? Which is, a lot of this is really about threading the needle, right? Between innovation and responsibility, or risk management and mitigation. And clearly the Biden administration has taken one approach. There are a lot of, as you said, a lot of fine print around how these systems can and should be managed, implemented, and how do we at least maybe anticipate and, if not address, the risks that could be inherent in these systems. And a lot of conversation, of course, in the industry, at least, about the extent to which these kinds of regulations might potentially stymie innovation. So to me, I think it will be interesting to see how we strike the right balance as an industry. I don't want to even guess what the government will do, but as an industry, it'll be interesting to see how we strike that right balance between innovation and risk management, especially when you take the global context into consideration, since obviously the EU has its own act, which has a set of specific regulations, requirements attached to it. And I'm sure other regions will come along with their own versions of whatever. And we may or may not be in step with those. It's unclear to me.
It may not matter either, right?
And it may not matter.
Because a lot of the technology providers aren't going to make 5 versions of their AI. They're going to make one, and they're going to just basically make it the most rigorous one so they don't have to reinvent it for each market.
Exactly.
Right. And it's very common. I think common sense regulations, those are uniform across the board, and those would continue to be. You have to make sure that those are in place. Otherwise, we're going to be at a bigger risk. As the humanity as a whole will be at risk. So we want to make sure that this is regulated in some shape or form. I know the industry leaders have already come together, and they have a forum which was set up by the White House that we don't know is going to continue or not, but I think that was a good forum anyway, cross-industry government collaboration, just to make sure that everything's headed in the right direction, and you don't have some very risky developments going on that might harm society as a whole here. Yeah.
Right. One interesting thing that could happen too with the new administration, then let's get into the book, and maybe this will be a good segue there, is obviously there is a lot of discussion. I don't know how much of it will actually be able to occur, or how much the administration will be able to achieve as far as staff reduction goes with the civilian side of the government, and maybe perhaps even the defense side. But AI can actually help in some ways maintain a service level quality, particularly with some of the more rote tasks. Like, for example, a use case I heard from the government printing office, which documents everything that Congress does, is using AI to fact check and to highlight potential moments that they want to send back to the committees to redact, especially if somebody, I know this would never happen in 2025, but maybe in 2024, they drop the F-bomb or something terrible in their comments, and they might want that redacted. So using an AI to do that instead of having a human manually process that. And GPO, by the way, has massive staff challenges anyway. They can't hire enough people to do this work. So that's why they're looking at the use case. But perhaps AI can help at least maintain some taxpayer integrity as far as their services, and maybe even improve services particularly when there's a lot of human eyeballing going on. Thoughts on that, Sanjeev?
Yeah, no, plus one on that. I think that's definitely AI and machine learning. One of the basic reasons why people are inventing or way ahead with a lot of these innovations is productivity, right? So productivity is one of the biggest thing that you can achieve with machine learning. And yeah, 100% like summarization of huge documents, right? It's a big thing. You have all these policies, for example, right? And who wants to go through the entire policy? I just want the abstract. So I mean, that's here away the efficiency. If you think about the new one the government is trying to do, that would be one way to do it. We don't really need all these such a big policy review. We can just take the abstract and we can have conversations about that. So there's just so much of productivity gains that you're getting. And then of course we could get into this later with agents is another thing, right? It's productivity, right? So a lot of decision making is going to be taken away. And you don't have to make all those small decisions. They're just going to be abstracted away to machine learning AI to take care of.
So your book is all about moving from strategy to design for real world applications within the public sector.
Yeah.
What inspired you to write this?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as it came on, that was the first thought that it struck me. Hey, this is fantastic. But how can the public sector use it? Because public sector is one of the largest influencer of the overall economy, and they've got so many employees, and there's such a big need for all the different citizens to get these kind of services. And it might really help out in so many use cases. Like, for example, being able to translate the same text in multiple languages when people can do that manually. If there's a way for AI to take a notice and then change that into Spanish and some other languages, that helps the citizens, right? They get their services really fast, and it helps the government. So that was just kind of, I would say, an aha moment for me. It's like, hey, this is fantastic, and I'm sure that this can be applied. The biggest thing is really, if you see, we've had this technology before. It's not like it just recently started. Right? Well, it's been around for a long, long time. But what's really changed here is the democratization of these machine learning models. So as opposed to being limited to the data scientists, to people who really know this stuff, now you have these models which are pre-trained by someone who is obviously an expert. But now you can offsource that or actually give it to people who can use it right away. And you don't need to be an expert in a data science. You don't need to be an expert in machine learning to use these models. That's why it's so powerful. Government doesn't need to staff up with hundreds of machine learning folks. They can just get these models. They might do it. There is some work that has to be done, but it's just so much less or lower than what it was before. Yeah.
No, absolutely. What do you think as you kind of dove in deep? Obviously, you work with the public sector. You've written this book on the public sector. And from your perspective, how is the public sector different from the private sector in terms of how it should think about implementing these technologies?
Yeah, for one, I mean, public sector, a lot more responsibility. You got to be sure that you're saying the right things. Gen AI as a science, especially when it came out, there's a risk to it. I mean, it's not 100% accurate. We know we talked about hallucinations before in the previous interview. That's a real risk, right? And so those models are probabilistic. It's not guaranteed that this is going to come out correct. So the public sector straight away has to make sure that the checks and balances are in place to ensure that the quality of the output is good. And it does not impact the society as a whole. The other thing is you don't want it to spit out information which is harmful to society, right? And the classic case was initially when this was brought up, hey, I can just search for how to make a bomb, right? It's got to give me in detail how to know that. So we don't want that kind of stuff.
Right.
Well, the public sector really, it's on the public sector to make sure that we utilize this technology properly. And the second thing is, of course, security comes to mind. Now, public sector is not alone in that. Financial institutions as well, they're also the same. But you got to make sure that it's top-notch, protecting the information about folks, PHI, PII. It has to be protected. So you've got to be doubly careful, right? So for that film, that's one of the biggest, I think, implications. The other thing is typically they're under tight budgets. Right? It's not like the other private sector where, hey, they can make quick decisions, they get funding, they're able to show the revenue very quickly, but it's not exactly the same for the public sector. Although it's good to do that, but there's a lot of other implications, right? There's regulations that you have to meet. There's compliance issues. So there's just all these other factors that have to be kept in mind. And then you have these pressing needs, vision needs that you have to meet, and the budget may go towards that more than these kind of projects. So there's a battle there as well.
Yep.
Yeah, fascinating. And then we wanted to talk a little bit about use cases, right? And some of the more imaginative ways that you've seen folks are using AI within the public sector. Do you want to maybe share a couple of stories that you're particularly fond of?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so one very interesting story is about, do you know, like in the public sector, they receive so many RFPs, right? They have to create RFPs.
They're
And they have to
nightmares.
post new RFPs. Right? And the process of creating an RFP, RFI is complicated, takes a lot of time, and you will see that the government spends a lot of, invests a lot of money in that effort. And the cycles are huge. I mean, it takes a long time to create the RFP, right? RFI. Then once it's issued, you get the responses back. Then you have to curate those responses. That takes a long time. So the entire life cycle is quite long, right? And the procurement life cycle is behind all of it, right? They're always behind. If I want to implement something, by the time I get it, the technology might have changed. That's an issue, right? And many agencies were quick to realize that, hey, this is an opportunity. And that's one thing I talked about in the book. You can use this for contracts. And you can actually have a database of all your contract regulations. And then you can actually use this to direct the creation of these proposals. So all the SOWs, the RFIs, the RFPs, what have you. So that can actually reduce the time for creating these documents substantially. It's not going to go away because you're going to need people to supervise it, and you can have these drafts created. Imagine that you're starting at step 8 as opposed to step 3 in this whole process. And you don't have to go on looking for information everywhere. You get this collection of data from different parts of the agencies. You have it in one place, and then you use that as a source to then create these new templates, the new documents. I mean, that's one of the biggest efforts right now I see in a lot of places, across the public sector.
Very cool. Very cool. So it's already come up a little bit in our chat. What about AI agents? Everybody's talking about AI agents. Should we be excited? Is it too early? Are we still dealing with data messes before we can even deal with an AI agent? Tell us your
So it's interesting. I mean, agent sounds so fancy, but it almost it's going to go. It's exciting, but there's some ways to go. And I'll explain why. Because what an agent is doing and underneath the covers is making decisions. So you have foundation models, right? Foundation models are these, large models that have been pre-trained. Like you said, somebody's done that. You're using this. And imagine that you are going in and trying to select between 2 flights, right? You've given it time. Now, what you're saying is you're just going to give the directive to the model. You're saying, hey, I want to get from maybe Washington, D.C. to Seattle, and I want to do it at a certain time. And then the model is going to take a look at that, and it's going to make some decisions, and then it's going to actually implement it. So that's similar to what an agent is. When you're directing it, as in when you converse, so let's say that it wants to know what time do you prefer, morning or evening. You give it some instructions, and it's able to figure out what's the right way to go about it. So that's what is happening underneath the scenes. And we already had that, right? A lot of it is there right now. You have these systems that do it, but it's being programmed. So it's an if-then-else statement, for lack of a better analogy. So you're saying, if the person says this, then do this. But now what you're saying is that's not going to happen anymore. The model is going to understand what you meant and is going to translate that to an action. That is, for example, maybe going and reserving a ticket in your airline. So it's very powerful, but the model has to do the right thing, right? It has to, it shouldn't go and book a ticket from Washington to maybe Atlanta when you want to go to see Atlanta. And made it a very general use case, right? It's not going to happen because you're going to have reviews, etc. But you don't want that to be happening. You don't want the model to make mistakes. And imagine taking that to the next level. This is integrated with the next one. Maybe it's integrated with Uber, right? So maybe it's integrated with saying, oh, you're going to arrive at that particular time, and that's going to talk to some model at Uber, and it's going to have the Uber ready for you when you arrive. So then it's kind of sequential like that. So agent is talking to an agent, is talking to an agent.
Right.
So there's this network of agents, which is really making this an autonomous process, right?
So Sanjeev, when you think about Apple Intelligence, they want all the app developers to tag what their app does, and in large part so that Siri can execute complex tasks. Basically, let me do this because you asked me to do this, then that, then this, then that. If you ask Siri, for example, I think we all have kids here, tell me when my kid's practices, is there a Chick-fil-A there? If there is, can you please order that Chick-fil-A for pickup 10 minutes prior to the practice so that I can try to get this kid fed before they run? There's contextual information in there, and there's information that's actually order specific. Oh, and by the way, Siri, please give me directions to the practice field with the stop at Chick-fil-A, right?
Yeah.
Siri, if you threw that at Apple today, it would bonk, right?
Right.
Right away.
Right.
Now, in theory, an agent would be able to do that. Do you see Apple Intelligence becoming the poor man's AI agent by stringing these tasks together in that manner?
Yeah, and I wouldn't even call it the poor man's. It's a very legit use case, and it's the interface to the agent is clear voice now, as opposed to you typing in. So that's the main difference. It's voice versus text. Underlying that is the same technology I just explained. So imagine I can just do the same reservation that I talked about using Siri or Alexa or whatever. Right? It's the same thing.
You want people to use it, right?
No, we're going to get like the name a little co-pilot, Livingston. Sneery right out there to be on. But more.
So yeah, I mean it's fantastic. It's a great use case. You just imagine that controlling your lights in your home. It's the same thing. The refrigerator, we've talked about all these cool things, like the refrigerator can actually figure out if there's something missing in your groceries and then start ordering the groceries behind. So
Yeah.
all that, the network is going to come out. So all those things that we have been talking about, these innovations are just going to accelerate that. And so, yeah.
Moving from hype to maturity.
Yeah.
Move it back to government or large enterprise, if you would. How much AI maturity does it really take to be able to do this? Like, how realistic is it that we're going to see agents in the marketplace on a widespread basis? I mean, I can see early adopters being in a position where they have the data cleaned up, they have the data science department, they have the teams like your team that are ready to go to help build stuff. But isn't that like the very small segment of the early adopter crowd?
Yeah, you're right. You won't see pattern where a lot of this is applicable to lower risk, lower risk projects, lower impact projects, where it's a nice to have, it's really fun to see, it really accelerates. But if it doesn't happen, it's not going to, you don't want this to navigate your flight in an ocean, right? It's going to crash and you don't want that kind of issue. So you want to control the impact of it. So you're going to apply these technologies initially. You'll see a slew of applications that it won't really cause that much damage if it doesn't work out. And as far as the maturity, I think it depends. I think the maturity is really very fast. This stuff is changing so fast. I don't think we're very far away when you start seeing applications of this, even in the government, even in the public sector. But again, it will not be in like in those most critical areas. It's going to be areas where you can take a chance. You can take a slight risk. And if things don't work out, you have a fallback option to implement that without really damaging a whole lot. Very many examples. For example, smart cities and there's smart lights, and imagine that you can control, when your sprinklers go on and off. It's everywhere, right? All these little kind of applications which have these benefits, but may not be that, again, not that high risk as compared to impacting safety the safety of the country, your personal safety. Those are the kind of things that you want to try and that you'll not see a whole lot there. Yeah. Sure.
How big of a challenge is it? And I think this is something that's been on my mind. It's been on Geoff's mind. Geoff's written about it as well. Whether it's in the public sector or private sector, kind of the same thing. A lot of organizations still have data challenges. Maybe the public sector is even a little bit better than the private sector in some regard, but a lot of organizations have data challenges. They're still struggling to prep their data for generative AI and traditional machine learning. Now you've got agents coming along that may need to access this data in new and different, more complex ways. And the other thing we see a lot of is organizations that have not quite defined and documented their processes in a really clear way. So now you have this new AI technology that's going to be using data and running process, but it seems like there's a much greater likelihood it goes off the rails. So what are the things that organizations need to put in place before they can really start to get the value out of agents?
Yeah, and this is a great question. So a lot of people ask this question, and I kind of have a slightly different view on this. So basically, I've been in the space for 30 plus years. This data problem it's always been there. It does not go away.
Yeah.
We have more data coming than ever, and it's going to
It's kind of like the attic problem, right?
Well, the best way to tackle it, and we do this at Amazon all the time, is you start with the project. You start backwards from a problem, and then you work backwards and you fix whatever you have to fix, and you keep doing it again and again. Because there's a temptation to say, let's clean this whole thing up. Let's just make this very nice. And I've talked to so many agency heads who are like, oh, we want to have this entire enterprise architecture with solid data, pipelines, etc. Most of those projects can abandon because it's impossible. You're trying to contain something that is exponentially growing. You're trying to manage it. Very, very difficult. So even despite the fact that we have so many tools, now we have Gen AI tools that will help you manage the data in a much faster way. We have that, but it's still not going to be enough. So the best way to look at it is, here, what's the problem, right? Start backwards. Start from that, work backwards, implement the solution. As part of that solution, you're going to clean up some data. You have to, right? Like you said, if I'm going to access 4 or 5 data sources, those data sources better be of high quality because you're doing garbage in, garbage out. Right? So you have to fix that. But again, it's going to be like based on problem set. What is going to give you the return on investment, and do it that way. And then over a period of time, it's going to keep changing, and you're going to get better and better. But you're going to keep moving forward.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, let's shift back to the book because I want to make sure that we're highlighting the key components here that I think are probably going to be more impactful, at least in 2025 vendors. So multimodal, right? This was the hype wave that was hitting before AI agents, and it's actually probably much more likely to be used as we're seeing more and more diverse media inputs and outputs coming from at least some of the LLMs and just generally speaking, complex models. Let's lay it down for the average business person or public sector administrator. What is multimodal AI and how does it matter to them?
Yeah. So initially, when we had ChatGPT come on, which really started this whole thing rolling for generative AI, it was based on something called GPT. 3.5 was the initial version, I think, which went out to the public. So that is a pre-trained foundation model. We talked about foundation model. And it is in a category of models called large language models.
Right.
And the way it works is you ask questions in text and the model responds in text. So that was the first iteration, and that's a large language model. So basic way of interaction is using text. Then we had something called vision-based models, which were image generation. So you could provide text to the model and it can create an image. But now we are seeing what is called multimodal large language models, MLLM. And what those are, instead of giving an input of just text, you can give an input of an image. So basically, you can pass an image to the model, and it'll be able to understand what that image is, and it's going to be able to do things for you. So, for example, if I'm searching in a catalog or in Amazon, right, if I have a picture of what I want and I upload that to the model, it's going to give me products that are very similar to that product in that picture, right? So intelligent search, really. That's a multimodal large language at work behind the scenes. And what's going to happen is now we're able to enter text, images, and it's able to translate into text. But you're going to also have the ability to upload videos. You're going to have the ability to upload audio, and it's going to be able to do the same thing. And now on the next level, it's going to be able to output video. It's going to be able to output audio and text, all this. So imagine now you can input text, audio, video, and it's going to be able to output text, audio, video. That's where we're going. Since we're not really, we have one model or two models which have come out for the video, but that's where this is going. And it's going to come sooner than later when you're able to create an entire movie, maybe a podcast, just saying a few words. So there's a lot of things happening there. So that's the multimodal capability that we're talking about. And yeah, that's going to change a lot as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of as we've seen some of these models come out, at least as demos, things like Sora or whatever.
Right.
It seems like the use case that gets put forward, because it's kind of sexy and cool, is this idea of, we can create entire movies, or we can disrupt creative industries. It can make advertising. It can do a broadcast,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And of course, there's also and it can create disinformation. That's a whole separate angle. But help our listeners who are mostly business executives, association executives, some public sector executives, think about what are some potential use cases outside of sort of the creative or native industries, because I think there are many, but I did not think of them because it's not where the focus has been, at least in terms of the narrative.
Yeah. So I give one example was the search, right? Like if there are so many agencies where you're searching for a product catalog and you can provide an image and say, give me what I'm looking for. Creation of, let's say, training material.
Yeah.
A lot of hours is spent in developing this training material right now. And imagine these tools are just going to make it so much more powerful and easier and more productive to create these trainings, and then again, highly improve productivity. You can communications out to folks. There's so many communications that go out. For example, FEMA, there's a disaster. They want to send a quick communication. They can just do it really, really quickly, send it out, right? So there's so many. GSA was the other one which I was going to talk about, was the catalog search, right? Where they are like the shopping marketplace for the government, right? So if you want to find a product, you can just upload that product image, or you can tell the GSA catalog, hey, I'm looking for this, and it's going to be able to show you visually what it's looking for. So there's all these different efforts. Sorry, go ahead, Jen.
No, I was going to say, to your point on the training videos, we literally heard about a government use case that's about to be deployed where they used Synthesia and a couple of other technologies to create the scripts and then build the videos for their training videos, not just for internal, but also for some of the customers who are using the government service. One thing that came to mind, I know this is kind of goofy, Greg, you're going to totally laugh, but remember AI Al Michaels?
Oh,
From the Olympics? I could easily see Noah doing this for weather reports and basically get like Al Roker on, and he's basically giving his permission to use a video likeness and his voice to provide local forecasts every time they update the system. That'd be pretty cool.
Right.
I don't know, Noah, you can pay me for that idea if you want. I'm here.
Right.
Well, that's very cool. Yeah.
Especially when you get to weather or climate emergency situations, to actually get something. I mean, whether you need Al Roker's voice or not for it, but maybe it gets people to pay attention. But getting personalized, localized information about what the impact is going to be, like down to your block, right? That's personalized and customized, not just the general warning for a region. That's incredibly powerful.
Right. And I think that's part of the challenge with public sector, at least at the federal level, is that it's not just this behemoth, right? It's a behemoth serving urban, suburban, exurban, rural communities. And it can be really difficult to serve all those stakeholders and constituents in an easy manner. Obviously, it's the same for large enterprises too, but that is just something that hampers public sector service delivery left and right.
Yeah. And there's probably audio. Audio is another one, right? We've had people saying, hey, we want to, for example, transcripts. If we want to have all these transcripts, you want to identify the folks in those transcripts, things like that. Audio recordings, translation of audio from one language to another, which is, again, I think we talked about it before. The other thing is planning and design. You're able to dictate what you want. That's one way. But if you're able to upload an image and say, I want to do something similar to this. Imagine designing a building, imagine designing a highway, imagine designing a warehouse, so many things. You can upload this. And again, we're talking a little bit more out there is, I think, again, it's probably 3-4 years away, I would say. But those are some of the abilities which multimodal will give you. And there's just a lot of the, and the other thing is research, CMS, being able to look at a disease and being able to simulate what something would look like, right? So there's all those different types of applications.
We've talked a lot about the positive benefits. What are some of the privacy implications of the workforce with multimodal?
You just have to be careful. You have your data, your images. You don't want those to be distorted. You want to be making sure that you're complying with regulations, 508 compliance. There's just a lot of this, making sure that you're not inadvertently causing issues for certain groups of people, like bias, for example. So the images need to be such a way that you're not affecting or targeting certain groups or minority groups. There's just a lot for the government to make sure that they're meeting the regulations that are in place and they're not violating any of that. Yeah.
Very cool. We're coming close to the end. Greg, do you have any follow-up questions you want to ask Sanjeev?
I feel like we've covered so much ground. One place we haven't gone really is kind of what's the latest and greatest with AWS and AI. Not that we want to turn this into an ad for Amazon. However, I think people will be interested in understanding what are some of the things that Amazon is really betting on, and what are some of the new and exciting things that they should be aware of.
Is this a Bedrock plug?
Yeah, that's one of it. I mean, there's a lot. I could talk for a long time about Amazon, but we are doing a lot. There's just so many different areas. Even if you look at I don't know if I mentioned the Amazon website itself is using it now. You can see cold summaries of all like when you search for something, you had to go through the hundreds of comments to see. Right now, you can just get a quick synopsis saying this is a summary, right? And it really gives you a good idea of what the product strengths are and issues are, right? So and that's on the application side, but we're doing a lot behind the scenes, like data processing. I mean, that's a huge thing for the government, right? Because we have so much of data which is sitting in these documents, and they want to extract information from it. And the traditional models, they can do that, but there's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of nuances, and a lot of training required to handle different situations. But now with generative AI, with these MLLMs, they're able to recognize so much of information that you can just send it through these models and it's going to be able to create the output that can be utilized for all kinds of analytics, all kinds of use cases. So those are some of the things that we're actually working on right now. And in about 2 weeks, Reinvent, a lot of it is going to be released to the public. So it's going to be really exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. This is a changing space. There's just so much going on. And we're just going to keep it. I'm pretty confident that we're going to come out with a lot of different innovations there. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. And probably, I'm trying to think, I'm not sure when Reinvent is, but it might be right after this episode releases. So folks will have plenty of other stuff to follow up on if they're interested in what's happening over there.
One quick question, Sanjeev.
Yeah.
I know that you guys have forged a relationship an investment relationship with Anthropic and Claude. And when I look at the bigger tech players, and obviously Amazon's one of them, each seems to have a model that they're closely associated with. And it seems like it may be that with Amazon, that Anthropic is your LLM provider of choice, or maybe one of your LLM providers of choice is probably the better way to put it. Can you tell us about that relationship and how you guys are working with them?
It's not just Anthropic. We're supporting we're widely encouraging and providing support to any provider that's investing in Gen AI. And we have a number of different programs for that. And so it could be anyone, and it's not just Anthropic. Anthropic is certainly one of those, but we have it with so many other providers as well. So it's, again, and that's to just show that our commitment to the Gen AI space, and we're interested in offering the best and keeping the customers happy with what is really the latest and greatest. So that's why we have Bedrock, right? Because you can provide so many different access to so many different models of choice, depending on the situation. And there's going to be a lot of changes happening. Like, there's going to be specialized models for certain use cases. There's going to be smaller models for maybe targeted use cases, like deploying on the edge, right? So there's just going to be a lot of different types of models, and it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And that's where I think the Bedrock, talking of putting a plugin for Bedrock, that's one of them, is then you can get access to all these different types of models, and you pick what's really good for your situation.
Which is
LLM agnostic.
Yeah, which is critical, obviously, not to get into a whole separate conversation, but it's become increasingly obvious that any substantial organization isn't going to want to place a bet on a single model, right? It's the ability to pick and choose the models that work best for your particular organization and use cases. It becomes, I think, an advantage.
Excellent. Perfectly put. Yeah.
Great way to end. Where can people find it? Where can they get the book?
Well, you can search for the book in Amazon.
We sell books.
So you can, I can be found on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to just give a shout out or connect to me, you'll find my name in LinkedIn. So happy to connect to folks, happy to address questions and whatever else is needed. But I thank you so much for the opportunity, guys. And I think it was great fun to talk through this, and this is an exciting field. What can I say?
Yeah, it's a great time to be alive. Dynamic conversation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for bringing your knowledge, your depth of experience, and sharing it with our audience. So again, as we started, so shall we end. If you are listening to us on your favorite podcast website, whether it is, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you are listening. Amazon, that's true. Amazon Podcasts. Wherever you are listening, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you're watching us on YouTube and unfortunately looking at these two ugly bald guys, plus Sanjeev.
Don't worry, it's not a disease. It's transferable for
Please on YouTube, again, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Again, we love ratings, we love reviews, we love comments. Please visit nobrainerpodcast.com, where you can use the contact us link to send us suggestions, comments, questions, and all that kind of good stuff. And of course, on that website, you will also find show notes for this episode, where we will drop a link for sure to Sanjeev's LinkedIn profile and to his book on Amazon. And I won't even say, or any fine bookseller, because really, who shops for books anywhere else? Thanks everybody for joining us. If I am not mistaken, this is probably the last episode we are publishing before the holidays. Am I correct, Geoff?
Baby, got one more, but it's really an amalgamation of AI Gov.
Okay. All right. Then I'm not going to. Then I will not wish you a happy holiday. We'll have another opportunity to do that. But if yeah, but have good holidays anyways. All right. Thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.